new reality beyond COVID-19 and the new opportunities. First, let me rewind back what was happening at the beginning of this pandemic. Can you all remember what was the panic when the pandemic just started? I'm sure you all have the answer correctly. Yes, it was the toilet paper saga. Just before the government announced DORSCON Orange, many Singaporeans rushed to the supermarket to buy toilet paper. In fact, after the news reported this incident, one of my overseas friends, who was a Singaporean before, texted me and said Singaporean kiasu. But what happened was, when this country started to face the pandemic, their people also rushed to buy toilet paper. And in fact, some even enter into a flight. Why? Why people do that? Is it because of kiasu? Actually, the simple reason is many people worry about the source of the paper would be cut off because of the lockdown in some countries. They worry about supply chain disruption. So what exactly is this supply chain disruption? In the past, many countries have been relying on a single supplier or a handful of suppliers, in particularly China. When China or some of the countries locked down, the supply chain suddenly cut off. So there are many examples of global businesses affected by supply chain disruption, such as the mask, auto parts, the garment materials, the chipboards, and many more. So because of this pandemic, a lot of buyers and many people depending on the supply chain in China are now having second thoughts and are beginning to diversify their supply chain as much as possible to be closer to home. So what happened after the supply chain disruption and the lockdown? Many countries started to enter into economic recession. So if you look at this map provided by IMF, the left side referring to year 2020, the right side referring to year 2021. So the red color represents countries with negative GDP, and the blue color represents country with positive GDP. So obviously, from the eye of IMF, this year, most countries will enter into recession, but next year, many countries will recover. So let's look at 2020. It seems like many Asian countries are performing better than the other part of the world. Actually, IMF predicted China this year, their GDP to be about 1.2%, much better than Japan, minus 5.2%, US minus 5.9%, and UK minus 6.55%. If we look at the Southeast Asia, some countries even enjoying positive growth this year. Vietnam, 2.7%, Myanmar, 1.8%, Philippines, 0.6%, Indonesia, 0.5%. So not too bad, you know, and our neighboring country like Malaysia, 1.7%, Thailand, 6.7%, and Singapore, minus 6.7%, and Singapore, minus 3.5%. So fortunately, we are actually on the better side of the world with lesser impact from the COVID-19. this means that even this COVID-19 continue, this side will actually less impacted compared to the other side. Or when the COVID-19 crisis over, the Asian and Southeast Asia country will be able to recover faster than other parts of the world. Next, now many countries enter into recession this year. Okay, so what the government want to do the next is to push for monetary stimulus packages to save the economy. So in the past, when we face some financial crisis, we always heard about QE 1, 2, 3, and 4. This means that the Federal Reserve injected money into the economy through purchasing long-term security, assets, or even agreements. But now, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, many countries actually bypass the banking system by providing monetary stimulus directly to the businesses and individuals by crediting into their bank accounts. And this is what we call helicopter money. The question is, where do they get the money? So in Singapore, we are very fortunate that we have enough national reserve to support the stimulus package. But in other countries, they need to borrow or they need to increase the tax in order to pay back the money. Recently, one of the very popular way in many countries is to print more money. And this is what we commonly call modern monetary theory. But the challenge of this stimulus package in today's market, especially for COVID-19, is that this money is supposed to increase the velocity of the money in the economy through spending. But you know, many people are not spending. So this money ultimately have to flow to somewhere. And many money actually flow to safe assets like property or gold. So stimulus package is important, but it may not be enough to save the economy. So the next thing that the Fed and other central banks are doing is to lower down the borrowing cost. So in early June, the Federal Reserve decided to keep the benchmark short-term rates near zero, to cushion the economic fallout from COVID-19. And because of this, Singapore SIBOR also had to follow. And they have to lower down their mortgage rates in order to attract borrowers. And according to the news from the CNBC, Fed sees interest rates staying near zero through 2022. So it will be there for a period of time. So how does it benefit to the property owner? We have used our Orange Tree Agent app financial calculator to do a simple calculation. You can see the example here. If a buyer purchased a property worth 1.2 million and borrow 75%, which is 900,000. If you base on the 3.5% interest rate, the monthly installment is about 4041. But if we base on the current rate of 1.6%, the monthly installment is 3,149, which is a 22% saving from the lowering down of the interest rate. So if you need any advice in terms of your financial planning, do feel free to contact any of our Orange Tree agent. Okay, so just now we talked about the world economy. How about Singapore? I think Singapore economy will not be spared from the recession. In fact, we already entered into a technical recession because of the negative growth in the last 2 quarters. So as a financial and logistic hub, the decoupling from the China supply chain will have direct impact. And not forgetting, Singapore economy also rely heavily on travel and also hospitality industry. So due to this reason, we actually suffer a 12.6% drop in the GDP year on year and 41% drop quarter on quarter. Of course, as we all know, the other biggest challenge is our job market. According to our DPM, the unemployment rates will continue to increase in the next few months. But personally, I think that fortunately, our government is very determined to save and create more jobs in Singapore. The recent announcement by Google about the new jobs and the skill training initiative for 3,000 local entry-level and mid-career seekers is a very, very innovative partnership. And I also see that there are some lights at the end of the tunnel. Okay, this is quoted by our Minister Chan, because while we are facing the threat of supply chain disruption, many businesses are also looking into Southeast Asia to relocate their manufacturing operations as part of the diversity strategy. So it was quoted by Minister that even as countries like the US and Japan diversify their production from China, so to Chinese companies going international and moving production to Southeast Asia. This will present new opportunities for regional economies like Singapore, which will in turn deepen the economic links between Southeast Asia and the countries. Besides that, the other consideration is Singapore might be also benefit from the US-China trade tension, as some investors are looking for safe places to put their money during the uncertainty period. In fact, this is quoted by MAS a few weeks ago. The foreign currency deposit jumped almost fourfold from a year earlier to US 27 billion in April, while deposit from non-residents rose 44% to USD 62 billion. The amount, the highest on record since 1991, were due to risk-averse investors and inflow from markets including Hong Kong. Usually our MAS won't quote this way. This is something quite uncommon. So now we talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the economy. How about other impact on other aspects? Okay, the next impact is the technology and innovation. Every crisis inspires innovation. If you look at the history, every time when there was a crisis, there will be some new innovations created to address the changes that arose from the crisis. For example, in 1930, after the Great Depression, instant coffee was actually invented by Nestle, and nylon was invented by DuPont. And during that time, television became very popular. So after the dot-com bubble burst in 2001 onwards, you see that Google and eBay became very, very popular. Okay, and likewise, 2003, during the SARS period, after the crisis, JD.com and Alibaba suddenly become the star in the e-commerce. And of course, the last round, we saw that during the global financial crisis in 2008, some new business model came up in order to address to the changes, especially we are talking about the sharing economy, company like Airbnb and the Uber. So every time when there was a crisis, new innovation happened after the crisis. So how about COVID-19? How about COVID-19? If you think back, we are actually moving, starting from the dot-com bubble, we're moving from the platform economy to a sharing economy. Okay, so now some economists is thinking that we are likely moving into an isolation economy. It sounds very scary, okay? But think about it. The technology in the last round mainly catered for the sharing economy to build trust between consumer and consumer or consumer and business. Because of COVID-19, because of all the isolation, technology will be moving towards isolation, contactless, or safety. So just to quote you some example, robotic, digital payment, VR, AR, online shopping, telecommuting, these are technology that will help to minimize the physical interaction. The technology like 3D printing will help to resolve the problem of supply chain. And of course, for the PPE, it's mainly for safety purpose. Other than technology, there are some other innovation. Okay, so there'll be innovation that allow us to continue to live in this isolation economy. Here are some good examples. For example, in terms of urban planning, likely there'll be segregation for the car lanes to transform many lanes into car lanes, bicycle lane, and even walking lanes in different colors. So everybody can continue to move from point A to point B without physical interaction. And also, I expect that even for the architectural design, there will be more green space, there'll be more ventilation, there'll be bigger windows in the future. And one of the possible trend is the developer may provide more flexible layouts for homeowners to convert their home into a home office. This is one very good example from one of our RCR project called the Woodley Residences. This 2-bedroom allows the owner to convert the dining area into another enclosed area so that they can double up as a study room for working purpose. So what they need to do is they can provide a socket-free, non-loaded bearing walls to allow for easy extension of rooms. And it's not only that, because of the concept of flush flooring, that will help you to extend your living room to the balcony for seamless living. This is important because just now I talked about green space, ventilation. So you will see more and more design cater to all these needs. And this is something that we are all very familiar with. Working from home with children, playing around or studying next to you has become a new normal in many families. Actually, I have a friend told me that he prefers to work in the office because he and his wife, together with 2 young adult children, they are working from home. So every time when they're all having video conferencing at the same time, the the whole house is like a stock market, but they have to accept it unless they change the house. Let's look at some survey. According to a survey, more than 80% of the people prefer to work from home now. And the main reason given are getting to spend more time with family, not having to commute to the office, and increased flexibility due to not being stuck in the office. So these are the reasons. So many companies are also looking at downsizing their physical office space and allowing more employees to work from home in the long term. According to my some of the market source, generally many companies are looking at cutting down about 30% of their office space. So obviously, remote working become a more permanent features of our lives. And the pandemic causes people to really reassess what they want from their home. This change could be here to stay even after the vaccine. Okay, because of this, many people started to feel that their home has never been so important before. And many also feel that, according to some feedback, even they are thinking of shifting because of the amenities, because of the facility they want to enjoy. And some even want to move to different places because they don't see the need to stay near to the office. Actually, according to a report by a UK property website called Rightmove, there was a significant rise in the number of people searching for homes further from town and city centers, with larger gardens and the space from a home office. So definitely, this pandemic has made many people think about how they want to live and where they want to live. Okay, so far we have been talking about the macroeconomic factors. Now let's look at the microeconomics, which is the property market in Singapore. For today, I'll only focus on residential market. So what happened to Singapore residential market? As you can see from the table here, if you look at the new home sales, when the government announced the circuit breaker starting from 7 April, we saw a drastic drop in terms of the transaction volume. Okay, from averagely maybe 700-800 units to 277 units. But after, when people get used to the virtual viewing, the number shot up to 487 units in the month of May. Last month, the number went up to 998 units. So it's a drastic increase. It's a strong rebound after the circuit breaker. If you look at the price, just 2 days ago, URA released their quarterly report, full report, and to many people's surprise, the prices of residential market actually rose 0.3% quarter on quarter in Q2 2020. Many people actually expect the price to drop, but it went up 0.3%. Remarkable. How about the rental market? Rental market, if you look at the volume, Q1, Q2, slightly lower than the overall average, especially Q2. But to me, this is considered as very encouraging because many people are not able to enter into Singapore. But the volume didn't really drop a lot. That means there are some tenants even commit without coming into Singapore to take a look. And some tenants want to continue their lease. So although there is a drop of 1.2% last quarter in terms of the rental, I think it's acceptable, considered as remarkable. by looking at the market. I think one of the factors is because we always have a very strong occupancy rate, very high occupancy rate. If you look at the average in the last many years, since 2015 until now, it's almost flat. We always maintain this occupancy rate more than 90%. If you look at the orange color, it's actually the overall occupancy rate is higher than 90% always. And even now, the overall average is about 94.6%. So this residential rental market is actually well supported by high occupancy rate. In fact, a few years ago, when people talking about oversupply, many projects going to TOP in the year of 2015-16, we didn't see a significant drop in terms of occupancy rate. Actually, it was actually hovering around the same area. So it's very, very encouraging. Okay, how about foreign buyers? During the circuit breaker, actually, many analysts expected the foreign demand will be affected in the near term because of the travel restrictions remain unchanged in many countries. So especially from initially from the China, who is actually the largest group of foreign home purchaser in Singapore. However, if you look at the data here, the demand increased over the last few months. The position of Singapore as a safe investment haven, and especially during this time with very quality healthcare services, is expected to actually attract more foreign investors back to Singapore. So as the financial market are likely to exhibit greater volatility amid the unpredictable COVID-19 situation, there could be a growing demand that some of the non-institutional investors, instead of investing in commercial market or other market, they actually came back to invest in residential market because they see that as a more stable and accessible asset. Okay, the next figure we want to look at, which is very important, is the supply of private new homes. Okay, we all know that before the government implemented the cooling measure in July 2018, there was a potential oversupply situation due to the massive en bloc activities from 2016 to mid-2018. But after that, the en bloc fever cooled off dramatically, and also government controlled the number of GLS sites. And because of that, now the supply level is in a much healthy position. And as you can see from here, the supply will continue to be very healthy until 2022. But there could be a undersupply, not oversupply, undersupply situation in 2023 because of the lack of activities, en bloc activities, and also fewer GLS sites. Okay, the next chart we want to look at is about the demand side. Just how we talk about supply, how about the demand? According to our research data, in the next few years, there will be a huge number of HDB flats reaching their TOP. And many Singaporeans, especially the HDB upgraders, they have the aspire to upgrade to private condos for better facilities, for the enjoyment of the families, the lifestyles. And we expect this strong demand strengthen the resilience of the private residential market. Okay, the other information I think could be quite useful for you is the unit size transacted in the last 10 years. You can see very clearly that in terms of one bedroom, it's quite stable. The one in the lower than 500 square feet, so the one at the bottom, the blue color. But if you look at the orange color, 500 square foot to 800 square foot, the number actually increasing. Okay, and 3 bedrooms very stable, 4 bedrooms 2002 to 2006 narrowing. Anything more than that is also narrowing. So the conclusion is more buyers actually purchase 2-bedroom types for their own occupation and also for investment purposes. Some of them, they think that if they at this stage maybe they want to rent out, okay, but later they may want to stay, or even later if they want to sell, they can sell to Singapore family who actually require 2 bedrooms. So there is a strong demand in terms of the 2 bedrooms, but we do expect that the demand on the larger units will increase because of the work from home trend. Because when more people starting to feel that they need a bigger house, maybe we may see this trend will happen in the near future. Okay, the other very important chart that we want to look at is the income growth. This is something that government always use this to determine whether they want to implement the cooling measures. If we look at the top 30% household income earner, their growth of their wealth is actually faster than the URA PPI. The URA PPI is about 26% in the last 10 years. But for the top 10%, up by 35%, top 11 to 20% up by 51%, and top 21 to 30% up by 56%. This is a very important indication, because if the income gap, because of all the, just how I mentioned about all the macroeconomic factors, because of printing of money, and because of the income gap is widening, you will see that the people with the higher income earner will be able to continue to pay for the private residential property. They will be the support factor to the private property prices. Okay, the last I'd like to share with you about the UBS global real estate bubbles. This is a very good indication of whether the property bubble in the country is facing any risk, bubble risk. And you can see from here, Singapore is one of the countries with lowest risk of the bubble. Okay, if you compare to the rest, we are actually ranked as fair value. Okay, it's not undervalue, it's fair value. It's not overvalue or bubble risk. There's no bubble risk at this stage. Okay, now I would like to show you a summary table of how the macro and microeconomics factors affect the property prices based on whatever I have covered today. I wish to make a disclaimer that this is not a guaranteed model, okay? Because each of the factors and the magnitude of the changes would actually can swing the direction into different way, okay? But why I'm using this table, because personally I feel that now might not be the good time for us to depend on the price trend to assess the property prices. Because if we believe that whatever we are facing now is unprecedented, okay, unprecedented, that means we cannot rely on the old data the historical data to gauge whether prices will go up or down, or why prices is so resilient. Okay, I think one of the practical way is to take into consideration the macroeconomic and the microeconomic and list down all the factors, the fundamental factors, and we see what are the factors that will cause negative or positive impact to the prices. So this is more about, basing on the current and also the future factors. Okay, so if you look at the right side, left side is actually the macroeconomic, the left side is the microeconomic. Economic growth, just how we mentioned, the world is facing global recession, including Singapore. So, I mean, we have to face it. It's a negative factor, it's a negative. Okay, unemployment rates with this COVID-19, with the lockdown, I think there is a high chance that the unemployment rates will continue for a few months, as what mentioned by the DPM. Okay, so I think it's negative. But how about mortgage interest rate? Just how I mentioned about Fed have started to lower down the interest rate to almost zero, and very likely it will continue until 2022. So I would see this as a positive. Market liquidity is a positive because of the QE or because of the helicopter money that more countries are pushing the monetary stimulus package, and the flow of the money is not, many are actually not flowing into the economy itself. It's not flowing into things like, spending or other purpose. End up, many may actually flow to the safe assets like property or gold, and property is one of the choices. Inflation, with the way that the more countries are printing money by adopting this modern monetary theory, there is a possibility that inflation will come in later. Okay, maybe in the next few years, we will see more and more inflation. Income growth, if we talk about the top 30% income growth is moving faster than the GLA PPI. But if you are talking about general income growth, because of the economy, because of the unemployment rates, I'll put it as a negative. But actually, we can put it as a neutral, something like this. Population growth, I don't know. Okay, this is a sensitive topic because we all know during the election, when you talk about this, it's highly sensitive. So whether we will reach 6.9 million or we will reach 10 million is a question mark. Okay, government policies referring to mainly cooling measures. I will take it as a neutral because the past cooling measures actually help to support the crisis, the current crisis of the property market. Because of the prudent policy, many Singaporeans or many investors are not over-geared. Okay, and because of the TDSR and MSR, all this, so it actually helped to make the property market become more resilient. Because ultimately, the intention of the government cooling measure is to stabilize the market, and we can see that the whole market is in a very stable direction. So I'll take it as a neutral. How about land supply and unsold units? I also take it as a neutral because there are still some unsold inventory. But if you compare to a few years ago, like 50, 60,000, it's a lot much lower already. But because of this period, many launches are actually hold back to a later period. And because of this, we will see some launches in the second quarter, second half of this year and next year. So I'll take it as neutral. But as I mentioned, if you are talking about mid-term or long-term, it could be an undersupply situation. Foreign interest is high. Okay, when there are more uncertainty in the world or in the economy, actually more foreigners are turning to Singapore. They want to secure a property in Singapore to make sure that they put their money in the right place. So foreign interest is definitely a yes. Pent-up demand strong. Okay, honestly, if not because of the COVID-19, I think the volume now should be much higher because of many other positive factors, and also because of the MOP flats. Many HDB flats will reach their MOP this year onwards. So I think this is positive. Occupancy rate, just like I mentioned, 94.6%, very encouraging. It's very stable. Bubble risk, according to the UBS yearly report, Singapore property market is at a very low risk of bubble. So I'll take it as a positive. Land and construction cost, I'll take it as yes, land cost will likely stable or increase, because from what I understand, every time a government launch the GLS, the competition is very strong. And of course, the construction cost, because of the dormitory issue, and because the contractors are obligated to provide better living environment for the workers, and because of all these safe distancing measures, definitely the labor cost is going to go up. So construction costs will be higher. Consumer confidence, it really depends on how long is the COVID-19. I mean, if the vaccine can be discovered sooner than we expected, then the consumer confidence will shoot up. So I'll take it as a question mark. Okay, so basically this table will give us a better understanding of why property market is so resilient. Even when we are facing this pandemic, we are facing financial crisis, the prices compared to many other places, Singapore prices is still holding on very well. Okay, next, just like to let you know that we have many projects in hand. So if you want to look for property with different location, different sizes, these are the lists that you can refer to. So we have a wide range of different sizes, from different type of room, from 1 bedroom all the way to 5 rooms and also bigger rooms. So there's a wide, very balance of the supply of the respective of the units. Okay, so do talk to our agents. This just now the one was CCR. This one is RCR projects, and the next one is OCR projects. Okay. Finally, last but not least, I wish to share with you the 3L investment strategy for your consideration. Okay, the 3L strategy is commonly used in the financial markets, but I feel that it is very appropriate for real estate investment, especially in today's market. So the first L is liquidity. The liquidity is about your household income, your rental income, your cash, your CPF, ordinary accounts, and any high liquidity assets. So when you take into consideration the liquidity, you have to think of all your short-term spending as well. And it is appropriate to think of having some financial buffer in case of any unforeseen situation. Okay, so your financial buffer or safety nets should be at least 12 months of your installment payment. Okay, so this is about liquidity. Then the next one is longevity. Okay, this is something that you have to think further, and it's really a family matter that you have to work with your family for the future well-being, and all your expenses for long-term expenses you have to take into consideration. And the purpose of this longevity is to create the recurring income for your retirement. That means if you own a second property, you will be able to enjoy the recurring income. But do take into consideration when you plan for your mortgage payment, okay, and your mortgage period, you should align with your retirement plan. The last one is about this legacy. So if you have surplus in your family and all your liquidity and longevity are met, you may want to think of buying more properties for your next generation. So it's part and parcel of your wealth growth and your asset progression plan for your next generation. Okay, so that's all for my presentation. Before that, we have just launched this analytics on the go. Okay, URA and HDB just released their data 2 days ago, but our agents already have this analytics on the go with the summary of the property trend and some short explanation of the data. Okay, so this is something that is very useful for you. If you need this, you can always contact Orange Tea agents for them to send to you. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. Once again, thank you, and I hope this seminar will help you to make better decisions on your property investment. Thank you. Now, I'd like to hand over to Ramesh.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that very insightful and thought-provoking sharing of current market trends. I'm sure our listeners will appreciate your very methodical approach in analyzing the current market situation based on the various economic factors you've shared with us. I guess the key takeaway for our listeners is that there are so many factors you have to consider before making the biggest investment decision in your life. So it's important to do your due diligence. But to make the process easier, you can always engage one of our real estate professionals at Orange Tea to help you really make that final decision much easier. For listeners who find this webinar series informative and useful, you'll be pleased to know that we have yet another property webinar session lined up next weekend, Sunday. Two of our very experienced leaders, Evelyn and Daniel, will be sharing with you their market knowledge on deciphering the right entry price and how to make money from real estate investments. So be sure to tune in next Sunday, same time at 3 p.m. to catch them in action. We will now move on to the Q&A session. If you have any questions, you may click on the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen, and we will be taking your questions live. We also have a panel of real estate experts who will help answer your questions, but I can also direct the questions to our MD, Stephen, to answer your questions. Maybe I'll start off with this first question, Stephen.
Okay.
This is from a listener. He's asking, with the pandemic, do you expect more HDB owners wanting to upgrade to private condo? If yes, why? Or you can disagree as well.
Yes, I do expect more HDB upgraders. Just now I show the charts about the MOP. these are the potential demand for the private residential property. Because if you think about the something like the life journey of the young people when they buy a HDB flat, especially a BTO, they will stay there for 5 years, 6 years, and likely they will have their children, and after that their children will grow bigger or older, and they will start to feel that they want to give a better lifestyle for the children, especially uh, they want the children to have maybe some facilities to enjoy. So this is always the dream of many young Singaporeans. So if they can afford, and after the MOP reach 5 years, some of them, I think many of them will start thinking of upgrading to private residential property. And the other reason is some of the HDB owners, especially when their HDB flat reach more than 10 years, they're starting to feel that there is a possibility that HDB flats value may drop because of the age. So this actually cause a motivational factor that some HDB owner may want to take this opportunity to upgrade to a private condo. So my answer is yes.
Right. Thank you, Stephen, for that answer. I think you also shared with us there's a pent-up demand due to all the units that are going to be MOP. So I do believe that, yes, there'll be more people wanting to upgrade after their 5-year period is over. We have another question that just came in. It's regarding your 3L investment strategy. The listener is asking, what are you referring to as the short-term spending in your 3L investment strategy?
Oh, the short-term spending are things like, for example, your travel plan, or maybe your monthly expenses, it's not something that you're going to commit for long-term. Long-term one are things like, for example, your car installment or your insurance, these are the long-term. So when you take into the consideration of the liquidity, you have to take into all these short-term expenses consideration.
I hope that answers the listener's question. Next, an interesting question. You mentioned some people may consider to stay further away from office to stay in a larger apartment. Would the property prices near CBD drop in the future? What is your take on this, Stephen?
Personally, I don't think so, because I believe that with this pandemic, I actually believe that the government may relook at the whole master plan to make sure that every area will be self-sufficient. Okay, that means maybe the suburban area may have some offices or factory, and in terms of the city area, government may enhance to have more F&B or amenities or things like this. And this is part and parcel of decentralization. And I think Singapore is moving quite fast in this area. And I also believe that property prices or the desire of staying near to the city or even Orchard Road is not just because of the convenience. There are many other factors, like, for example, the status, they feel more privileged, and also the maybe school. And even for foreigners, when they move into another countries, usually they will look for places which is more centralized or nearer to the CBD or shopping area. So I do believe that prices will still be able to hold, and in fact some people may feel that because of this, the living standard there could be even higher because of more exclusive living environment.
Thank you, Stephen. I think interesting perspective, interesting question as well. So we can only see in future whether the appeal for CBD really keeps as strong as it is currently. Okay, this is another interesting question from another listener. A lot of property buyers are considering to buy HDBs because they are bigger sizes at cheaper prices. So what is your thoughts on this? Do you think this is for retirees? Is this a valid thought?
I think ultimately it's about your needs, especially after this COVID-19, after the circuit breaker. It is very important for family to plan together. It's not just a husband decision or wife decision. To really think that, you know, what will be their short or even long-term needs of this property. If they really need to have, let's say, 4 rooms because they have more children, then they have to work within the budget to have 4 rooms, whether it is a HDB or it is a private. I think to cater to the needs is more important. So if for families that they really need 4 bedrooms and their budget is for HDB, then they have to look at HDB resale market. So it's really depend on the needs itself. But I also believe that we will see people moving from bigger units to smaller unit, but smaller units to bigger units. But there may be some people also moving from bigger units to smaller units. Maybe because of just like I mentioned about the amenities or the facilities, and also some families, maybe after their children married, they might feel that, you know, they don't need such a big house, so they may move into a smaller units.
Right, thank you, Stephen. This is a few listeners are asking the same question about your thoughts on the ABSD. So do you expect government to implement another round of cooling measures soon, or lifting the cooling measures? What is your take on this, Stephen?
Personally, I don't think the government will do anything to the cooling measure for the consumer side. Maybe they may do it for the developer side, especially the 5-year ABSD period because of the delay of the construction. But in terms of the consumer side, as I mentioned, the purpose of cooling measure is to stabilize the market. If you look at the number now, every month we are talking about plus 1%, minus point something percent, plus point something percent. To the government, this is already a very good outcome of the cooling measure. So there is no need for them to either enforce further or even to relax at this stage. But of course, this can be used as a kind of safety net in case if the economy is not doing well in the future. Government will probably look at maybe to relax some of the cooling measures. But at this stage, if we look at the prices itself, I think they are quite comfortable with this range, this trend.
Okay, it's already 10 minutes past 4, so I think I will just ask one last question. We have one listener who has asked about legacy planning. You mentioned legacy planning, and they're asking whether it is always, should we then look at freehold properties, which makes more sense for legacy planning. So I think this is quite a common question, but we would like to hear your opinion, Stephen. For legacy planning, do you recommend freehold over leasehold properties?
Yes, if you are talking about legacy planning, because your intention is not to sell. So if you base on legacy planning, the preferred choice is freehold, but also not. I think there are many factors affecting the future prices, not just the tenure itself. It's not just freehold or 99. There are some 99 condo, even after many years, the property, the value still hold on very well. If this condo come with very unique features or good finishers, good developers, yeah, I think the value still can hold. So, but if you are talking about really no intention to sell, that could be one of the choices. I mean, the choices could be a freehold property.
Right. Thank you, Stephen. I think that brings us to the end of the session. I know there are a few more questions coming up, but I will keep this session open for 5 more minutes for our panelists to address a question. Gentle reminder, if you'd like to obtain a copy of the presentation report, feel free to approach your representing Orange Tea and Thai agent for a copy. And be sure to tune into another Orange Tea and Thai Consumer Empowerment webinar next Sunday at 3 p.m. I want to end off by saying a very big thank you to Managing Director of Orange Tea and Thai, Stephen, and also our expert panelists for helping us with the questions. For listeners who still have questions, you can type in the questions. We will be open for another 5 minutes. And I hope you found this session informative and insightful as I did. Till next time, I thank you everyone for joining us today and have a very beautiful Sunday evening. This is Ramesh signing off. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you.